I took the new CineView M7 and M7 Pro monitors on several productions, and they might be the most advanced monitors that I've ever used. Now, they're not perfect, but I will say it's probably the most useful piece of gear that I've added to my kit this year. Now, I first saw these monitors back at NAB, and I was really excited because I'm a huge fan of the CineView Master 4K, which is their wireless video transmission system, and I honestly think it's one of the best ones for the money. Now, for full transparency, I actually did reach out to Accsoon and asked them if they would send out these review units for me to test out and let you guys know what I like about them, but also let you guys know what I didn't like about them. The thing that really stood out to me the most when I unboxed these monitors is that they both had a Calman certified report, which means that they were color calibrated from the factory. For those not familiar, Calman certification is an industry recognized program that ensures displays meet really high color accuracy and performance standards using Calman software. So you'll often see Hollywood and post-production houses use this, especially on high-end monitors like Flanders. Now, to see a monitor that's under $1,000 get this type of factory certification is actually very rare. Now, going back to the unboxing experience on the M7 monitor, you get the monitor and that's basically it. There's no HDMI cables, no USB-C cables, or any batteries. The M7 Pro is pretty much identical, with the exception is that you do get the antennas because it is a transmitter and receiver, but we'll talk more about that a little bit later. Now, Accsoon also sent over their monitor cage with sun hood, which I do think is quite nice and it fits really well. I definitely think this is one of those items that is worth picking up. Now, in this video, I'm primarily going to be focusing on the M7 Pro. Although technically they're both identical, they both have the exact same ports and pretty much the exact same features with the exception of one. This one has the wireless capability. So technically they're both Pro models. I'm not sure why this one wasn't called the M7 Pro TR for transmitter and receiver, but regardless, this is the one I'm going to be focusing on. But let's go ahead and take a look at the physicality of both of these monitors. Now, looking at the monitor, this is a 7-inch 1080p display with 1000 nits of brightness. Now, Accsoon claims that there's this special coating called DXC that is supposed to cut out reflections, and honestly, in my testing, I did find that to be the case. Now, moving towards the back of the monitors, there's two battery slots. You can use Sony NP-F batteries to power this monitor. There's also a USB-C port underneath that, which gives you 5 volts out. So if you want to power some accessories, you can actually use this monitor to do that. And I actually found that very useful in one of my shoots. Now, there's also an additional USB-C port to the right side of that that says PD in. So you can actually use USB-C power as long as it's power delivery to power this monitor. So you don't actually need to use those Sony batteries. Now, towards the right side of that, there's 2 SDI ports, one of them for input, the other one as an output if you want to output to, let's say, an additional accessory. I do like that. Now, moving towards the left side of the monitor, on top there is a microphone 3.5mm input. Beneath that is an HDMI input, and then below that is a 3.5mm headphone jack with an HDMI output. So there's multiple ways to output, whether it's SDI or HDMI. Now, flipping the monitor to the opposite side, there's an SD card slot, so you can actually record. This is the recorder, so you can record to the SD card. There's also an internal storage, which I'll talk more about that later. Underneath that is a 1/4-20 mount, which is really nice. And then below that is another USB-C port. Now, this one here is actually if you want to attach a storage device. So you can actually record to an SSD, which is actually pretty awesome. And then below that is a DC barrel input. So there's 3 different ways you can power this monitor. You can use the Sony NP-F batteries, you can use the USB-C port, or you can use DC power. Now, looking towards the bottom of the monitor, there are several 1/4-20 mounting points. You can use this to attach their cage, or you can also use this to attach several accessories, like I've done here with a NATO rail. Now, towards the top of the monitor, there are 5 physical buttons. 3 of them are user programmable, the 4th one being a home button, and then the last one is a power button. Now, what makes this monitor unique compared to anything that I've ever used is the fact that this is running a custom version of Android OS, which means you'll find performance to be fast, smooth, and very fluid, and in theory, better third-party tools and future expandability via firmware updates. Turning on the monitor takes roughly about 30 seconds, and this is because Android has to boot up, and then it loads the Accsoon C app. If you've ever used any of Accsoon's products like the Accsoon CineView Pro, this is the exact same app, so the experience is very similar. Now, for those not familiar with the CineView line of products, it was a small device that attached to your camera that allowed you to use your iPhone or iPad as a monitor. I did a whole video on the Accsoon CineView Pro, so if you guys are interested in watching that, I will leave a link down below the like button. But what I really loved about the CineView Pro was the app experience. It was so easy to use, the customization you have, all the tools, the menus are very intuitive. For example, the bottom tool list here are things that I use the most. So if I want to add or remove something, I can quickly go into the menu, go to the tool list bar, and just tap to add or remove things. The same goes to the top physical buttons. I can just tap on physical keys, then tap on what button I want to customize, and then map that key to a special function. And just to give you an idea of what kind of tools you get, there's waveforms, false color, focus peaking, anamorphic D-squeeze. You can add your own custom LUTs. I mean, there's so many things that you can do, and pretty much anything that you would expect from a high-end monitor, this thing has. Now, speaking of LUT support, this monitor can actually function as a LUT box because it can output a video signal with a custom LUT. So this is actually outstanding for live streaming. Remember, you can also record onto the monitor and have a different LUT and bake that in without actually messing up your main camera and still have that log profile. Now, as I mentioned, this monitor can record internal or externally using an SD card or by plugging in an SSD to the USB-C port. You can record up to 4K 60 in an H.264 or H.265 codec. Sadly, there's no ProRes or BRAW support, but that could change in the future via firmware update. Now, like all products I test out on my channel, I like to put them through a real-world production to see how they perform and also find any quirks. I also let other people test them out to get feedback in case there's something that I missed. So as a monitor, the M7 is outstanding. The colors are fantastic, and even when I compare it to my more expensive Small HD Indy 7, it was honestly hard to tell them apart. The viewing angles are excellent and the build quality is top notch. Also, as I stated, the UI is super easy to use and is very responsive. Now, we use this on a shoot with my Ursa 12K, and because there's very limited accessories for that camera, having that external USB-C power on the monitor was super clutch because I was able to use that to power my DJI focus motor, which actually worked flawlessly. Accsoon is also working on developing camera control for certain cameras, which will allow you to start-stop recording, change the ISO, the aperture, the white balance. Sadly, on the productions that I was a part of, the cameras that we use are currently not supported, so unfortunately, I wasn't able to test that out. Now, as I mentioned, the M7 Pro is the monitor that I was primarily interested in testing, mainly because of its wireless capabilities. Now, as a director's monitor, it performed flawlessly. One of the things I love about it is that you can record internally, which means that if I want to show playback to the director or the client, I don't have to bother the camera team. I can just use the monitor and show them, which I think is going to be something that I'm going to use moving forward. Now, the M7 Pro can be used as a transmitter or receiver, but as of filming this video, I could only use it as a receiver. The firmware update is coming soon, which will allow you to also transmit a signal. But I wanted to see if I can pull focus, as I had a few gigs where I was going to be the first AC, so this would be perfect to test it out. So in one of the shoots, we used the Lumix S1 II, which is an HDMI only camera. Now, we also use the CineMaster 4K transmitter, which is able to send out a 4K signal, which honestly looked great. Range was also solid, and I never ran into any hiccups. Accsoon claims 350 meters of range, and I mean, I've tested their CineView Master 4K system, and I actually found it to be pretty accurate, and honestly, I didn't have any issues during my tests. Latency was also quick, and I know Accsoon claims it's 60 milliseconds, but honestly, it feels way faster. And I even said this when I reviewed the CineView Master 4K. The latency is almost as good as my Teradek, which technically has no latency, and I even demonstrated that. So I didn't have any issues in terms of latency here. Now, I did run into some really weird quirks with their software. Again, nothing really to be alarmed about, but I think they're worth noting. For one, I found that you can't flip the display. We wanted to rig the M7 Pro as a director's monitor for a motorcycle shoot we had, and it only made sense to mount the monitor upside down since the antennas are sticking up. Unfortunately, we had to scratch that idea since there was no way to flip the orientation, which is strange because it is running Android. And yes, I went into the settings to make sure screen rotation was enabled, but it probably doesn't have a gyro sensor. Luckily, the cage does have 1/4-20 mounting option, so we were easily able to rig it without any problems. Another minor quirk or annoyance is if you want to adjust the display brightness, you have to do it through the Android OS. I know it took me a few minutes to figure this out, but once I saw it, I was like, oh, duh. Yeah, you just swipe down and there it is. But I just feel it kind of takes you away from your element. I realize that most of these are software related issues, so I wouldn't be surprised if most of these get fixed with a firmware update. In terms of hardware, I honestly couldn't find any issues. And there are two things, and I'm just being very nitpicky here. First of all, if you try to power this using NPF batteries, technically both batteries are draining at the same time. The way most monitors work is it prioritizes one battery, and then that way you can hot swap and then have the other battery available. It's not a big deal. I just wish that, again, if they're both draining and they're both low, I know that, I better switch both of them out as opposed to taking one out and then hot swapping it. The other one is the DC port. If you're gonna use the word Pro in your name, I would expect a locking DC port. Again, not a big deal. There's two other ways that I can power this monitor. I'm not a fan of it, which is why I primarily use the NPF or even the USB-C port, but yeah, DC should have been locking. So after using the M7 and M7 Pro monitors, I think they're an outstanding option if you're looking for a monitor that just does it all. I feel the M7 Pro is best used as a wireless director's monitor. While you can technically pull focus and use it as a first AC monitor, your mileage may vary depending on the camera setup that you're using. So just keep that in mind. I will say though that the color accuracy and all the features that these monitors offer have quickly made it to my top 3 list of monitors I can recommend. Let me know what your thoughts are, and if you guys have any questions, leave me a comment down below. My name is Armando. Thanks again for watching, and you will catch me in the next one. Adios.